Welcome to the second episode of Next Gen Africa, a groundbreaking podcast by the Kevin Winter Foundation dedicated to inspiring changemakers for the next generation of Africa. I'm your host, Fortune Winter, founder and president of the Kevin Winter Foundation, which is a U.S. nonprofit with the mission to support the education and training of youth in Africa. Our guest today is Mrs. Mika Kamara Alman Laman. She is born in 1985 in Mali, the current president of the International Association of Youth and Students for Peace, IAYSP, Africa region. She graduated from the University of Tasmania with a Bachelor of Arts and Business in 2007. After working in human resource management, she pursued a career in youth work, leading various youth volunteer programs in the Oceania region in Australia. In 2013, she earned her master's in theology at Sunpark UP Graduate University. Since 2020, she has led IAYSP Africa and developed a leadership training course and character development academy for African youth. Mika's passion lies in empowering youth to build a brighter future for all. She is a wife and a mother of 3 beautiful girls, and she currently resides in Zambia. Welcome, Mika. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Fortune.
So I'd like to start by asking about your background. We can go into a little bit of your background story, how your upbringing influenced your perspective in life. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Okay, yes, thank you very much, Fortune, and I'm grateful to be on this podcast. Yes, so as already mentioned in my short bio, I was born in Mali. My father is from Mali, but my mother is from Australia. So I was born, that lived majority of my childhood, you could say, my early childhood in the African region, namely Mali, Ivory Coast, as well as Nigeria. And then you could say I lived a part of my life also in Australia, where my mother is from, and I did my studies there as well. So I guess from the upbringing of living in both sides of the continent, right? You could say from the African continent to the kind of more Western continent of Australia. I came to see both sides, and it has given me a perspective on life that definitely, no matter where we are in the world, really we are all like the same human. Well, that all come from the same source, you could say, the original creator, our heavenly parent. And definitely our desire for happiness and family is there for all of us. So I really felt it's given me perspective on life, in the sense also that I learned to adapt more easily to different cultures, different backgrounds. My mother, actually, she's from a Christian culture. My father is from a Muslim Islamic culture, but centering on their vision to really build one family under God, they were able to come together. And that has actually, made me also feel that it's possible, that no matter what color you are, no matter what, religion you are, we can become one, right? So I feel like I'm a product of that because, being from both a father from Africa, mother from Australia, I'm a product of, showing that unity and what we can produce from that. So definitely that has given me a big perspective on life and how we can move forward as one family.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Just to give some context to the audience, Mika and I actually have known each other since we were little kids in Nigeria, where we grew up. Our families being missionaries and working together there in Nigeria in the 90s. And so I have a lot of fond memories. Always look up to Mika as my elder sister. And as she's talking about being one family under God, I really feel that. We had a unique perspective of growing up in this compound with a group of missionaries and their families. So we've always had, at least I can speak for myself, I've always felt a lot of love growing up, a lot of support, and being raised in that kind of environment and community. I took it for granted, I guess, moving to America, because you see a lot of people who are lacking that background and
Mm-hmm.
lacking that the strong family unit that can
Mm-hmm.
give them the education that's needed to help them to develop their
Mm-hmm.
characters. And so going on to society, and um, when you ask yourselves and you see, when we ask ourselves and we see all the terrible things going on in the world and how people can do terrible things, certain
Mm-hmm.
acts, it seems to always go back to that background and the upbringing. Um, what going back to your background story, what made you change your career path? You were in business, as your bio said. You studied
Mm-hmm.
business,
Mm-hmm.
and then you went on to work in human resources. And at a certain
Mm-hmm.
point, you I believe went to Korea and pursued a theology
Mm-hmm.
degree, and
Mm-hmm.
ended up working in the nonprofit sector. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that? Your
Yeah, yeah,
thought process there.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah, well, as mentioned, even by fortune, so my background, my parents were missionaries, and we really, they really lived with the belief that we can create a better world, we can create peace, we can bring love, not just to our own families, but to the community, to the nation. And I grew up in that kind of environment. And I have to say, when I was in Africa, I felt it was more possible because of the culture also already being quite family orientated. And, even though we're not from the same family in terms of blood, you still call your, elders aunties and uncle, right? And elder brother, elder sister. So it was very natural to feel like, yes, definitely we can create this one family that, and as I said, I grew up in that kind of environment, you could say. But when we moved to Australia, I was already now, it was like my high school age, 16. And I have to say, I came to, you could say, a culture shock. The realization that that's that kind of community of feeling that really we're one family and that you call each other uncle, auntie, it wasn't really so strong in Australia. In fact, I felt more than community, we focus more on our individual families. And I remember that very clearly. And even to the point where I remember, here in Africa, like in the nighttime, for example, of course, because of the weather, it's nice and warm, right? Everyone's outside, you hear music, you hear everything, right? And there's so many people outside. But I remember going to Australia, my first feeling was actually like, why is there no one outside? Everyone was just in their own home, and yeah, perhaps it was the weather. It's actually definitely cooler, right? We lived in Tasmania, one of the coldest states of the continent of Australia. But it felt also like that's also the lifestyle, just, you go to work and you go home and, maybe you invite people and friends here and there, but definitely it's not as open as it was here in where I grew up in, for example, in Nigeria, even in Ivory Coast. So I feel like I experienced that kind of culture shock, and even internally, I guess, in terms of even the belief that perhaps we can bring about this one family, this global community, I started to doubt the possibility of it in a way. Not because I didn't believe it, but not because I didn't want it, actually, but because I felt it's too idealistic. It's not real. Not everyone is just doing their own thing, and maybe I should just do my own thing as well and just benefit from that, and that's what I did. I mean, in a way, that's what I started pursuing, because that's what society in Australia at the time, or my friendship group, my environment, was showing me. Just focus on yourself, focus on your own success, and then yeah, you get there, right? You'll be happy. So I started doing that, and that's where my pursuing of my degree, well, to be honest, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I first entered into university. I just knew that I did want to work with people, but I didn't know exactly in what area. And I decided human resource management mainly because it had the name human. So I assumed, okay, it's related to people, right? And then I also chose sociology and international relations. So in the end, I pursued the major of both human resources and international relations. And to be honest, I did want to go, when I completed my degree, I didn't necessarily want to go straight into human resource management or anything. Actually, I wanted to go into volunteer work. And because I did feel a need to somehow I wanted to pursue more in the level of humanitarian aspects. But I didn't get that job straight away. So what came up in front of me was human resource, a degree, I mean, a position as a human resource, supporting a human resource manager in a company. It was a GHD civil engineering company, actually. And so I ended up doing that just because it came up, but I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it because it was dealing with people. I was helping people. But I guess what happened that made me really change my focus was the realization again that even though people are focusing on their own lives, they're getting money, externally things maybe look very well, they were not necessarily happy, you know. And an issue something that actually was a kind of a crucial point in my decision making was actually a financial crisis that hit our company, and we had to actually lay off about 10% of our staff. And I was in my company, of course, it's a global company, but in my own office, what I was taking care of was around 300 people. So that's 30 people needed to be laid off. And me being a human resource, part of the human resource team, I was then one of the people to start making decisions about who should be laid off, together with my manager and, of course, the other bosses. And for me, this was a hit, to the realization that no matter how much you make, because the people that were being chosen, some of them had invested their whole life to this job. And here they are now being in a position to be shortlisted to be, said, actually, we don't need you anymore. So yes, that's the aspect of the organization. They had to deal with it, right? Financially, for the sake of the organization, that had to happen. But what hit me in that moment was the impact that had to people. And the fact that those people being laid off, some of them really felt like, what am I going to do? This is my job. This is my whole life. How can you just lay me off, And it just gave me this realization that if your job, right, is the only purpose in your life, yet this job doesn't really, at the end of the day, really take care of you necessarily as an individual, because it's still kind of focused on its own external development, then actually, yeah, you may fall into a really big situation, and it just made me feel like I can't just let this be also my path in life, because at that point in my life, I also didn't have any other major purpose but just succeeding in life through having a good job and eventually, having a good family and things like that. So this was a big eye-opener. And the second eye-opener was a very strong realization that we as people, even though we've been able to do so much in the world, we somehow just accept bad situations as such is life. I remember this very clearly when we were in the conversation room, actually in the office where I was working. And I think there were some issues happening I can't remember, I think it was related to actually the Israel-Gaza conflict that's, has been an endless conflict for ages now. And I remember just people accepting, well, such is life. Like, we all knew that it wasn't good. We all knew that this is not something that we should see, that people shouldn't be killing each other, right? But we just accepted that, oh, well, such is life. That's the situation. What can we do? And that just hit me. Like, I just felt like, no, that can't be life if we don't agree with it. We're the ones actually who are able to create such huge, like even all the aspects that we've done so far in the world. I mean, this is human beings, right? And so I think we can make a better world if we want to. So this is what also just made me feel like, yes, maybe it is idealistic, but it's not impossible, especially because we want it. And we are the ones who've done a lot of things that maybe in the past looked impossible, right? But we've done it. So if we decide, surely we can do it. So that really just, I guess, brought me on my path of journey to finding another course to make an impact in the world. And yeah, that's where I went eventually to pursue a theology course, mainly because the founders of my belief, actually, Family Federation for World Peace, Father and Mother Moon, which my parents also really came together because of their vision, their principles. I started to also see the value of that, and that I wanted to pursue and understand that better. And I wanted to help them, actually. I wanted to help them because I could see that, yes, there are many things happening in the world, but these people were really doing this for the sake of not just themselves and their own families, but really for the sake of the world. And so that's where I started pursuing the course of even following, the theology or training course that they set up in Korea, for which I graduated from as well.
Wow, it's really
Sorry,
deep.
that was very long, but
No,
anyway.
no, I'm grateful you shared that. It's meaningful because it's real, and
Mm,
it's your story, and um, there are a lot of people that are going through, most likely, uh, we're all one human family, dealing with
mm,
relatively similar situations in one way or
mm,
another. And so I think your story really can impact a lot of people that are dealing with similar situations, especially what you said about the feeling of such is life, that you
mm,
just have to take what you're given. And I
mm,
think more and more you can see around society, people are no longer accepting that.
That's
People,
right.
especially the younger generations, they don't take that as an answer.
Mm,
They're
mhm,
protesting, around the world. And as you
mhm,
said, there is another way. Otherwise, we would never have advanced as a society in general.
mhm,
And I'm happy you brought up the founders of
mhm,
IAYSP and Family Federation. Do you mind talking about, as president of IAYSP now since 2020, I believe, right? And so,
mhm,
do you mind introducing, for those who don't know, what the IAYSP organization is and its founders?
mhm. Yeah, sure. Yes. So yes, as a president of IYSP, IYSP is the International Association for Youth and Students for Peace. It was founded in 2017 by our founders, Father and Mother Moon. And they, as I already mentioned in my previous just sharing just then, they're also the founders of Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, also Universal Peace Federation, also a very known organization that's really done a lot to bring religious leaders and politicians together to form that kind of vision for peace and unity. But yeah, in relation to YSP, in short, Youth and Students for Peace, the focus is on the young people and how basically the vision, right, is really becoming a global youth community that can really start living for the sake of each other and bring peace and prosperity for the community. So we are formed with that vision and the mission also to really start attending, right, and realizing that and forming. We also stand on four major principles, actually, RISE, which
Um,
I think also Kevin Winter Foundation has also utilized for the sake of also their youth education program. But yeah, in relation to that principle, we really, the four principles arise are representing responsibility, really making responsible young people who really can take ownership, and I representing integrity, right? Really start standing for who we say we are, right? Not saying one thing and doing another. S representing service, so really acting with a life of service, serving others. A lot we really advocate for a lot of our volunteer programs in regards to that. And E representing empathy, which also really is to connect to understanding that we are one, we are all connected, we're all interconnected, right? What hurts me also hurts my brother and sister, and that I should start taking note of that no matter what color, race, background, or culture I come from. And all of those four values, actually, the core of it is what we call Hyojong, HJ, which actually is the symbol of our logo. And this is because Mother Moon really emphasized that Hyojong, it's a Korean term, but maybe literally translated like filial piety, but it goes beyond that. In that it's not just filial piety in the sense of only as serving our parents, but really coming to know our parents' heart and connecting to that, and really not out of duty, but out of absolute love, right? That we want to really attend to our parents' heart. And we're not talking about just our physical parents, we're actually talking about our original creator, our heavenly parent. So this is something that I feel really embodies all of the other characteristics or values that we are standing for, and also what we are working towards, which is bringing the young people, empowering them to know who they are, but also making sure that they are there because actually we come from our original creator, our heavenly parent. And then as a result, how can we now work together as brothers and sisters to really build, that family that we're all looking for, to really build that community, that nation, that world, because the youth have that potential. Yeah, this is also an aspect of YSP. We do empower the young people to believe that they can make the change. Instead of looking for hope, let's become that hope. So this is something that we are working towards across the world, but in Africa, especially as I'm leading the continent here for YSP, this is something I'm really excited to be part of, and because definitely I can see the potential this organization has to contributing to really creating, raising young people, with character. Actually, character development is also another major aspect of our organization. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. One of the things you mentioned about Hyojung and the definition of that, and how filial piety it goes beyond just duty, which is filial piety, I think, in the Eastern world is very common. You see a lot of the youth, especially being raised with a sense of filial piety. And I believe also in Africa, a sense of duty to, take care of the families. Maybe it's not even just, I think it's a lot of parts of the world. I don't want to isolate those two areas, but I would definitely, compared to the Western society, it's kind of in the recent decades have started to leave necessarily the society and the upbringing. But the way you shared it being about not a sense of duty as in like some external sense, but in an internal sense of love for your family and love for your parents and for your original, for Heavenly Parent, the original creator. So that adds a really touching aspect to that, where I don't want to go into too much of my story here, but definitely I think when you said that, it touched my heart, because that's one of the things that got me started in the nonprofit world, was my sense of duty, and from a artistic perspective, to my family and to my community and to my religion as well. We polled a couple audience members before this meeting, which is something we like to do we'd like to do moving forward, as we announce that we have an upcoming podcast with a certain speaker, and ask if there's any questions the audience has. One of the questions was raised, is IAYSP a religious organization? Is it strictly for religious youth, or is it open to the public? That was the question that was brought up.
Okay, that's a good question. Is IYSP a religious organization? Well, it depends how we want to look at religion. But for me, I think religion is a means to an end, which is to, realizing that, we are all here, and it's a pathway to bringing us closer to our original creator, whatever name we call that creator. But definitely it is not an organization. So in a sense, yes, the founders of IYSP definitely believe in that, right? And the founding of all of our organizations are centering on that. But we are not here to segregate each other, to say that only this particular religion can be part of this organization, or only someone who believes in God can be someone to help serve and attend to other, to help other people. No, we don't. That's not the case. IYSP is not segregated in that way. We are open to really anyone who believes in the vision and mission and values that we stand for. And that can be from, any religion. It can be from any culture. It can be even, from any belief system. But the values and mission and statement, like any organization, I think you need to agree to that to want to be part of that, right? So I think that's the key, that we should accept. So it's not a religious organization in the sense that we only focus on one religion, but definitely the values that they stand that come out stand with the understanding and belief that we come from God, who we call Heavenly Parent, and we believe that he's a parent of all of us all. So that's why we are all brothers and sisters, and that's why as a youth community, we need to come together as siblings and really start working together as siblings, because really we're the ones who can make change if we want to, if we unite, right? I think we all know if we have brothers and sisters, we fight, we can fight a lot, but when we come together and unite, like there's a lot we can do, right? So I do feel that in answer to that question, it is for everyone, but of course the belief in the mission, the vision, mission, and values we stand for should be something believe in and want to be part of, for you to feel, to be part of the organization.
That's great. Do you mind talking about some of the IAYSP initiatives? For instance, you're welcome to share any, but one that really inspired me was hearing about the Benin activities taking place there in Benin with the peace designers and the Social Entrepreneurship Academy. But you're free to share any. I just wanted to, promote that one as well based on my experience hearing about it.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot happening, and we have chapters in each. We have the 5 sub-regions of the region of Africa. We have presidents representing each sub-region, and we also have chapters in each nation, in around 27 nations actually of the region. And the one you were mentioning, Benin, actually the president, Guyton, he is a very vibrant youth leader. And he's also the president of the sub-region, of the Western sub-region, but also the national president of Benin. And he's definitely doing a very big job, very great job, where he's reaching out to the youth through the character education content that our movement, that our organization administers. And he did this actually 2 years ago as well, where he was able to reach out to around 13,000 youth through the universities and schools, and it was very well appreciated by mayors and also some official governments, like ministers of government. So it really made an impact. And so this is kind of a continuation of that, where he wants to even go further to even engaging, not only being the team as YSP, going to the different schools, but starting to even recruit the youth of the nation, of the community, to also be part of this tour, you could say, to make a change, make an impact using the character education content that our organization uses. So it's brought a big impact to the nation. It's well appreciated by mayors, by university presidents, and even to the point that they're the ones now they're calling their top young people to join the program. We're not anymore recruiting people or advertising as much, but even the different universities are sending, and different high schools are going to be sending their top students to be part of this tour, first to get educated, and then also to be the ones to share this education and content to the different youths of the nation. So it's definitely a very potential program. And we're really looking forward to what it will bring, and definitely want to support his initiatives there in a way to even maybe show a model for which other nations of the region can take part in. So we're really applauding his efforts there. And of course, this all comes with, as I said, the desire to make an impact in the education of our young people. I think education, most of the time I feel is more seen in the external aspect of education, like, in promoting our IQ, you could say, and the more knowledge we have. But we really believe the foundation of education starts also with the character education and this, the heart education, because you may be very well skilled, very well intellectually, high, but if you don't have the right values and character, you can use that for bad and doing the wrong things. So we emphasize first and foremost, yes, we definitely want to promote external education, I mean, for sure. In fact, that's a weakness in our region. You could say that we still need to promote, skill and intellect and developing that more so that our young people can excel in that, but not without the foundation of character and heart education, because without that, then we can raise leaders and we can raise high-level intellectuals, but as you can see, maybe with corruption, for example, because they're not really caring for anyone else but, their own situation. So it shows that it doesn't work. It doesn't really work if we don't have that basic level of really understanding where we come from, our stance on our, the heart, the character, recognize, as you mentioned, integrity, recognizing that what I want and what I say is also what I do, not say something, but I'm doing something different, right? So it's a very important point that YSP really focuses on first and foremost. But at the same time, actually with our great supporter like Kevin Winter Foundation, we want to help the young people also excel in skill and train and get them to a level where they can, have character, but also have that skill, utilize it to, be entrepreneurs, to go into the workforce and be a strong, good employer, eventually maybe a leader that really can stand for those values of responsibility, integrity, right? Service and empathy. Basically, this is the reality that we want them to excel externally, but the internal point of character and heart education is something we do promote, and we need that collaboration now also to support the skill training. So we're very grateful for that, this partnership that we have with Kevin Winter Foundation, because that's what we're doing actually, centering on character education, at the same time also building our capacity externally in terms of skill and intellect. So this is something we really are promoting. Other initiatives, well, as mentioned, I think we are also leading a program, what we're calling the Hyojong Run Leadership Training Program, which is there to really raise the next generation of leaders. So people there, we're actually recruiting youth from across the continent who want to really stand to become leaders of the continent. First starting with leaders of our organizations, right? Because as I mentioned, we have a few organizations that we need leaders for. But in the vision is not just leaders for our own organizations, but even leaders of Africa, leaders of nations, leaders of universities, anything actually. So this also, we believe, is very necessary in our region. We need to start raising the young people as leaders, recognizing that they're not leaders of the future, but leaders of even today, and that their voices can be heard. They can be part of, be on the table with decision makers and start, sharing what needs to happen, because at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones acting out or implementing a lot of the decisions that we're making now. So I really feel their involvement will allow them to take ownership of those decisions, and also make sure that we recognize that. So that's an initiative that IYSP also is doing here in our region. We also created another organization per sub-region, actually like academy, and it's related to also educating our youth first in character and faith, in order for them to, after high school, we want all of our youth to have this kind of 1-year course of first, service to the community, you could say, right? Before even attending to their own university or what they want to do. Like really first, let's serve the community. Let's understand who I am first and foremost, as a person, as a human, as God's child. And then from that, make a decision about what career you want to pursue, what job you want to pursue, because many times actually straight after high school, you don't know that. And we see many young people who enter into university and they don't really have a clear pathway or vision for their life. And in the end, they get consumed by the environment, which isn't very positive, as I think we all have come to recognize, right? Alcohol, like more free time to be together. Yes, it's a kind of a time of like peers, where peers become more prominent, right, in your life than maybe your parents, and which is a normal thing. I don't think it's a bad thing, but without the right environment, you may just waste time, right? You may even lose your time. You may even make choices out of just, impulsivity, and that might be very detrimental to your future life, right? If we see the issues of, teenage pregnancies and things like that. So it's not something that, we really believe that having that 1 year of service to the community, to understanding and recognizing yourself first and foremost, basically character development, right? Is the way forward to also then knowing, okay, what purpose do I want to, pursue, and like basically finding your purpose, you could say, and then now choosing your path of life centering on that. Yeah, so this is also an academy that we are forming. It's more currently at the moment more for our Family Federation youth community. It's called the Chonilguk Citizen Academy, because we are all, Chonilguk actually represents the terminology we put forward towards God's nation, right? And so it's more for the Family Federation community at the moment, but we are looking at how it can even be more as a general course for anyone, any youth, no matter what background, to feel that they can be part of it, for which then they can also prepare, offer 1 year to which they can prepare their course of life and what they want to do. So that's also another major initiative more related to character education. But there's a lot happening. Different nations are doing many different things, sometimes more in the volunteer work, service projects, their, peace walks, working with governments and other NGOs in order to really start bringing peace, because every nation has its different reality. So we are still trying to maybe develop more in a way. But so far, I feel a lot of what IYSP is doing is very good. And we've been told actually by the international community of YSP, our international president, that a lot of our chapters are in Africa. So, he really does, he's actually very, as the international president, President Matsuda, his name is, he's really applauding what Africa is doing, and also comes quite often to Africa to to support and also to engage in IYSP activities here in the region.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Yeah, I'm happy you went into the different programs that IYSP is working on right now, and I'm grateful that we, KWF, can be a part of that however we can.
Definitely.
You talked about peace and some of the aspects. You actually answered about 2 or 3 questions I was going to ask after this, but so I'm happy you went into that. I wanted to talk about, since you mentioned peace, and just as of recently, there have been protests, obviously, all around the world, but in different regards. But more recently in Nigeria, in the last week, there have been pretty strong protesting taking place. I wanted to just briefly share a clip of the news report on this, just about a minute long, and get your take on that.
Hello and welcome. Our top focus remains in Nigeria, where protests against economic hardships have turned deadly. At least 13 people have been killed in the rallies across the West African nation, as per rights groups, with fears of the death toll mounting further. As per reports, many deaths took place in the Kaduna state, as thousands across Nigeria marched against the rising cost of living. Nigerian security forces fired live ammunition and tear gas to break protests in major cities. Some Nigerian media outlets have reported that the death toll is feared to be higher at around 17, and that people have lost lives in major cities like the capital of Abuja and Kano. In Kano, the country's second largest city, protesters set fire to tires outside the state governor's office, and police responded with tear gas, forcing most of the demonstrators back. Protesters later ransacked and set a digital center of the Nigeria Communications Commission ablaze. They also raided a warehouse near the Kano governor's office, while police fired shots into the air to disperse the looters. A 24-hour curfew was later imposed in the city. Hundreds of protesters also demonstrated in Abuja, the commercial capital, Lagos, and several other cities. People chanted slogans against President Bola Tinubu, calling him a thief. Now, the mass demonstrations comprise mainly of young people demanding an end to poor governance in Nigeria. Inspired by similar rallies in Kenya, they mobilized the protest on social media, using the hashtag #EndBadGovernance in Nigeria.
You cannot move from point A to point B in this country today without not necessarily breaking your neck. The cost of transport had gone up. You cannot begin to nurse the idea of sending your words to the school in this country right now without not even have to think 100 times.
Nigerian officials had warned against attempts to replicate the violent demonstrations in Kenya, where at least 50 people were killed. While the protest anxiety prompted the Nigerian government, led by President Bola Tinubu, to offer multiple concessions ahead of the rallies.
I wanted to share that because it speaks a lot to the growing insecurity and the struggles of the youth, especially of all the population. It touched me deeply because, as I said before, we grew up there in Nigeria, and so I want to connect the work that IAYSP is doing in Africa to how that can be a solution or contribute to a solution to the importance of education for peace and security in the region.
Okay. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I had heard about it actually, but not, I didn't see a clip on it yet. I just heard it passing, I think, on social media actually. Yeah, to be honest, watching this also makes me feel really sad and sorry. As you know, I shared, we grew up there. And I also remember just Nigeria, like, I think, as we know, it's probably the most, in terms of oil and resources, it has like a lot, but its own people suffer from the lack of. And I mean, just an image of that for me was, I remember just waiting in line to get petrol, in a country that sources petrol, right? So it was just something that, like, why are we in that situation? And I've also remember, knowing that from the most rich, I think, I heard, I don't know if it is the case now, but I remember that time being said, like, maybe 10 of the most richest people in Nigeria could probably serve the whole population of Nigeria. So meaning the extreme in terms of, richness and what they have, and people not having anything. And it comes to a point where it's just not fair. And it will eventually backlash because it's not normal, right? Because, as I said, we're a family. So once you see that your family members are suffering, if you can't change that, it will affect you in the long term. It will impact you. They will come. It just doesn't work because we're all we're connected to each other. So we can't just focus on our own families anymore, or our own selves. It just doesn't work. It's not the principle of life, you could say. So this is a reaction of that, I feel, from watching this, and it's happening all over the world. Especially in our region of Africa, I think a lot of the young people are starting to just say, no, enough is enough, right? You can't just live in your mansion while our nation is we're crumbling. We don't have food, we don't have work, we don't have ways to feed our families. It just doesn't work anymore. So I can just feel that we're getting to that point where I think leaders need to really wake up to this. And but how I feel YSP maybe can help. Well, I think it's maybe raising the young people to see that, yes, this is wrong, but maybe not utilizing necessarily more conflict, right, to make it change, but maybe how to create that change, how to be that strong voice in unison, how to you know, show that we are going to be people of integrity, and we, you know, as young people are going to be people who are going to demand change, right? That things that are not right, we should share it, right? We shouldn't hide anymore. We shouldn't not voice it. But we should also believe that the change is going to come from me, you know, from us, and not just point fingers, right? It's very easy to point fingers like you are wrong, you shouldn't be in leadership, but what are you doing as well as an individual, as a person? Like, are you really also a person of integrity? Are you, you know, also doing things that you believe in, or are you still conflicted by, you know, your environment and your peers, and eventually influenced by that? Because at the end of the day, I feel that's what the government and, you know, is like. That's the situation that they are. If they don't have strong values themselves, then they're influenced by the environment that they're in, and it's not very easy. It's toxic, actually. You know, it's power dominant, it's money dominant, it's corruption. You know, and even though you may have entered into it very as a good person, like I want to make change, it's very easy to fall into that trap. Maybe believing you can't do much because you're only one person. So that's where I think, as the youth, need, as YSP, I mean, the desire of YSP is to first raise you as an individual to recognize even your own issues yourself now, you know, and just already start changing that. Because yes, you are going to be a leader. You could be a potential leader. But if you can't do that now in your own environment, in your own family, right? If you can't say no to something that you don't believe is right because you're influenced by your peers, then how do you think you're going to change when you go into the government office, right? So it starts from even just the basic things now. And that's what we're trying to, you know, raise that awareness in our young people. And also not only in ourselves, but to recognize also the need for unity as a, you know, to create that community with the same values, because then we can support each other, right? Because I feel sometimes in the leadership structure, the reality is, yeah, everyone is there for themselves. But if we really see, okay, yes, you can be the leader, and I'm going to support you to become that leader, centering on these values, you know, and we're not there to fight for what we only for ourselves, then I feel we can create a really, you know, great nation, because that's the foundation of a family, right? It's when we serve each other. It's not that everyone gets the same cut, you know, all the time, but definitely, you know, it will benefit the whole in the long term. So I do feel like that's an aspect that we are sharing with the young people, and YSP, through character education, through our service projects, through understanding those principles of living for the sake of others. This all impacts in maybe our perspective on how we, as we develop, as we grow to become even the future leaders, we end up making decisions that are correct for not just ourselves, but our nation. So I think that's my take to how YSP can help. But definitely, yeah, we really need to do that quickly, because if not, then we may just retaliate with more conflict. But we all know that retaliation with conflict doesn't always bring what we need. Yes, it can make, like, maybe it can show change, right? It can show like anger, and which I think it's somehow, yes, our voice needs to be heard, definitely. And I think we need to give a platform for that, whether it's something we want to hear or not as leaders, maybe. But I feel that, yeah, we need to also recognize, instead of pointing fingers, right, but also looking at what is it that, how am I also changing to myself, so that I can really be that change that will influence others also to change. I think, and as a community, if we do that together, then surely we will be able to bring that change even to the top level. Because especially now, I've noticed that civil society, NGOs, they're actually having a lot of voice these days in terms of the, what's maybe the way forward for what governments make as decisions, because their governments also are like kind of looking for answers to they know they have problems, I feel, especially youth. When it comes to young people, every kind of meeting I've had with the ministers of education, of youth across the continent, everything is about, we want something that can help our young people really either stay in their nation, be able to produce and move the continent, the nation in terms of work, to to empower the young people. Like everyone's always looking for answers to how to engage the young people. So I feel like as an NGO, as a civil society, like we have that potential, you know, if we can show a pathway to helping the government raise their young people, I'm sure they're open to it. Yeah, but it requires, yeah, that kind of working together to also bring that change. So that's what I can share.
Thank you. That's really well said. And people, you know, the population in Africa is 60% of the population is under 30. And so it's got a really high population of youth. And so you're empowering IYSP, and the work you're doing is empowering the youth and educating the youth. One of the quotes, I looked at one of your speeches from 2023 at a peace summit in Korea. You said, education is not something that is fast. It doesn't bring the results straight away. It is the most sustainable and the only way an individual will be able to be empowered, inspired, and to keep learning and creating. I thought that was really well said.
That's right,
to end
yeah.
this, since we're getting closer to the hour, the last segment of this, I wanted to just get your insight. One of the audience questions was, how do you manage to juggle all the different hats you wear, such as IAYSP president, mother, wife, and your roles in other organizations?
Wow. That's a big question. Well, how do I manage? I think to be honest, it's my role model. Yeah, that allows me to believe I can do it and encourages me to do that just through her own life. And that role model is Mother Moon, as I said, the founder of our movement, our organizations, because she's a mother. So, you know, she's a wife. But from a very early age, even before me, as a young person thinking, let me try and save the world, she made that promise, you know, to God to say, I really am going to make a world for your children, you know, for the people that is, you know, really as it was intended to be, where we live happily, peace and prosperity, and we grow together. So I have to say in short that that's what gives me inspiration, because yeah, there are times where it's not easy. I even wonder for my own family, like I'm not always there for my daughters. Are they going to feel like you know, their mother's just never there? Because I grew up also a little bit in that kind of situation. My parents were very busy, you know, trying to save the world, right? And I remember thinking like, well, you know, maybe that's not the best way, because I have to say, I did also struggle from not having them around. But the only time I feel like that really hit me the most was when I left Africa and went to Australia. Why? As I said, the difference in terms of how we live as a community, like a family in Africa and a family in Australia. Not to say, I think you mentioned it, it's not like Australia are not family. They love their families. I'm not, you know, everyone, I think as a human, we love our families and we are there for each other, you know. But in terms, like generally, the culture of living as a village is more stronger in Africa. So to the point that I remember feeling that lack of love, maybe from my parents not being around, more so when I wasn't in that environment as a community where I had brothers and sisters. You know, as I said, I was living with Fortune, for instance, like, you know, I had my younger brothers, my older brothers. It didn't really, like, we all felt as family. We had our uncles and aunties. And even though my mother might not be there all the time, I had someone I could, you know, talk to, you know, in relation to anything I may need, you know, as a sister. So definitely it was stronger, you know. I could feel I didn't feel that lack so much. And so that's actually what keeps me also going now, because it's not, at the end of the day, we will leave our family for the greater family, because we're part of that. We're not just our individual nuclear family forever. You know, yes, my daughters are with me, but they are going to go out, you know, into the school, right? They're going to go out into their work. And if that environment is not also good, it will impact them. So I may have I could focus on my own little world, right? And my own little group, my own little family, and make a perfect environment, make sure they grow up well. But they're not going to stay just there. They're going to go out, meet their friends, right? They're going to go out, meet their uncles and aunties. They're going to go out, go and meet their teachers. And so if that environment is also not conducive to their life or their growth or peaceful, it's going to still impact them. So I think for me, what actually got me to really even walk this path, even though I knew that it might be challenging, right, was because I felt like I have to build that community even for my own family, right? Because if my next door neighbor family is suffering, it's going to impact my family. So maybe you could say it feels even selfish, you could say, but it's not, because at the end of the day, I'm serving also someone else, right? In order to have a better environment for them so that it can benefit all of us. Yeah. So in the end of the day, it may seem like a bit of a sacrifice now. I feel like it will be a benefit in the long term. Because if we're all happy, if all our families around us are happy, if our community is happy, if our nations, are stable in peace, then we will be in peace. But if they're not, and I think we all notice that now, right? Even though you may live in you have all the money in the world, you can get impacted by war just like that, because, someone decides that they want to bomb the nation for some reason because of some issue. So you can't solve anything anymore just by, status or power or money. I feel like we really need to, really kind of recognize that we need to build this community together. And in answer to your question, I wear different hats, and it is not easy, I have to say. Also, being a mother, I do feel that for my children, but what I see in them also is, an environment where they have a lot of uncles, they have a lot of aunties, they have a lot of brothers and sisters, and I feel that in the long term will benefit them even more than just me being present in their life right now. So of course, a balance is needed. I'm not saying I completely neglect my role as a mother to them. That's not the case. But I do feel that as Mother Moon, I call her my mother actually, that she's done it and she's doing it. And I feel like I need to help her regardless of some of the challenges that I will face, because I believe it will bring a better world. It will bring a better community, and this will benefit my children. It will benefit me, my family, my husband. It will benefit all of us. So let's just do it. Yeah, let's go through those obstacles one by one, and let's make it happen.
That's really well said. I don't think I can say anything to add to that because it is so well said. For those interested in knowing more about IAYSP and either donating, getting involved, where would you direct them to go?
Okay. For IAYSP, well, we do have our website, which I believe we can share in this podcast. But we don't actually have the platform for supporting. More likely is actually through Kevin Winter Foundation, because they're directly supporting us. So I think what you're doing now, listening to this podcast and, going on to supporting them, they are, definitely supporting IAYSP Africa currently. But we are also working on developing our platform also for receiving donations. So through Kevin Winter Foundation, also we'll share that through as well, so that you may have also that direct access. But definitely what is happening through Kevin Winter Foundation is also supporting IAYSP Africa. So
wonderful.
That's
I'd like to end with a new tradition. What I'd like each guest to leave one question for the next guest, not knowing who they are or anything. What is your one question for the next guest of our podcast?
Ooh. Wow. That's on the spot.
I know.
Especially since I don't know who and what context. But I think my question is, which is very broad, but how can we make Africa great? how can Africa become not just the receivers, but the givers to the world? And how can we really bring the young people, empower the young people to be that change in the region of in our region of the continent of Africa? That's kind of 3 questions, but more related to, let's make Africa great.
Amen. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Mika. Thanks for sharing, giving your history, your insights, your backgrounds, and directly speaking to the youth and how they can be able to be the change that they want to see in the world. As Michael Jackson said, I think.
Yes, that's right.
What is your message to Africa's youth?
Okay, so my message to the African youth, I think one of the things I really want to share is that, let us not look outside our continent necessarily to find hope. Let us become that hope. I know we have a lot to do, and sometimes we may wonder, how can little just me make that change? But we can, and we are the future of the continent. The way the youth today set their vision for their community, nation, and continent will be what will be realized as we're going to be the main actors. We may not be in charge of the decisions now, as we are not all we're not all on the decision-making table, but our voice in unity will truly influence decisions to be made. So let us come together, united with the vision to make Africa great, but starting not first with our external development, but with character development. Let us choose to become people who, when given funding, will not put 90% in our pockets, but truly invest it all for the better of the community, nation, and region, even if it feels you are left out in that moment. The fact is, you will not be, as your family will benefit, your community will benefit, and in the end, so will you as an individual. So let us begin with forming families that value and respect our original parent, God, our ancestors who attended their original parent, and then even our parents, who, despite not being so perfect, have given us our life for which we should be grateful. So let us become families that truly will keep the original tradition, centering on who I call God, by first of all, living as one family, knowing that we all come from the same parent, so we are all brothers and sisters. So let us come to know and treat each other as such. When we think of our continent from the developed nations' perspective, the first thing that comes to mind is poverty, sickness, corruption, and terror. But when I think of our continent, having lived here, the first thing that I think of is family, community, laughter, and gratitude in the face of not much at all, and love for our Creator, whoever and whatever name we may call him. So this is something to be proud of and utilize to now start improving on those other matters we may face, such as poverty, right? But definitely our uniting on our strong points with the right vision and method centered on the principle of living first for the sake of others will for sure and absolutely bring about the bright, beautiful Africa we are looking for and would love to live in. That's the message I want to share with my African youth. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, what is your message to our audience?
Okay, the message to our Kevin Winter Foundation audience. Well, I just want to applaud all of you for contributing your time, your money, and even prayers for the success of this foundation. This foundation, by name itself, is very dear to me as it represents the legacy of a father and an uncle to me who showed nothing but gratitude for life and lived to make others around him happy. He loved our continent of Africa and dedicated his youth and whole life to serving and educating the African community, especially the young people. His children had to share him to all the youth of the continent as he became like a father to us all. So for me, the success of this foundation and what it is doing and will continue to do to raise the youth of Africa is something that will surely be realized. And so your investment will never be a lost one. Please continue to support in any way you can, as nothing is too small. And truly, our organization, as IYSP, being one of the beneficiaries so far of your support, I can only share my gratitude to you all on behalf of our youth community. Thank you, and let's just keep going.
That was wonderful. Really touching part about my dad too.
Definitely.
Did you
share? Because it's true.
Yeah. Did you have a message to the global audience?
Okay, yeah, so the message to the global community, well, let us work together to maximize our strengths and minimize our weaknesses to truly create the global community where we all benefit from what our Creator intended for us all. I feel the fact that we just focus on our own continent or our own nation or our own family and so forth. Yes, in the short term, it may seem like the right thing to do. But as we're coming to realize, our global community is getting closer and closer, so that what affects us here in Africa will transfer to affect us in Australia, in America, in Europe, and so forth, as we saw even this time in the pandemic of COVID. Before, maybe the pandemic of malaria and cholera, for example, is something that only affects the developing world. But our global community is closer than before, so that what impacts one side can easily transfer to impacting the other side in no time. What does it mean? Well, we need to start seeing our families' problems in Africa as also our problems, wherever we may be living, and start to utilize any resources we may have to solve the problems together. Africa is not a place to take and then give back in the form of donations, but also a place so they themselves learn to flourish, so they can be in a position to give and receive as well. There is a lot to do, and when faced with our own problems, it is difficult to think of someone else's. But as the teachings of the founders of my organization, Father and Mother Moon, have shown me, the more you invest in others, the more you will gain, as that is the principle for which we were created, whereby even God, our Heavenly Parent, invested all, even at the depletion of himself, in order to create us who, through our existence and relationship of love, would bring back greater joy and love than he ever could have on his own. So with that principle, namely living for the sake of others, let us move forward as one global family, and for sure we will find true peace and prosperity for us all. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. And thanks for accepting to be a guest on our podcast and sharing such wonderful messages. I feel that the audience will be able to get a lot out of this podcast. And if the audience would like to subscribe, follow the Kevin Winter Foundation, follow the IAYSB organization, please do so. You can do it on our different social media platforms, and pay attention and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.